The silent cry, the colony of Asteron, was small, but it was full of life. Children laughed in the gardens, miners worked in the deep tunnels, and traders moved their ships in and out of the docking rings. It was a place far from the wars of great empires, and the people believed they were safe. But safety is a fragile thing in the galaxy. It can be broken in a single moment without warning, without mercy. It began with a shadow. At first, the settlers thought it was only a passing fleet, ships that were crossing the outer rim. But when the alarms screamed and the skies filled with dark shapes, the truth became clear. These were not traders, not neighbors, not friends. They were hunters. The attackers came fast. Their ships were black and sharp like knives. They moved through the void like predators, cutting through the colony's defenses as if they were nothing. The orbital satellites fired, but their shots burned out in silence. Their shields cracked like glass under the first strike. Families ran to the shelters, doors slammed, alarms echoed, and the air itself seemed heavy with fear. The attackers did not aim for soldiers. They aimed for homes. They targeted hospitals, schools, and the markets. They wanted the people to suffer. They wanted the colony to burn in the control room. Commander Hale stood watching the scanners fail one by one. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he ordered the emergency signal to be sent. "Send it now. Send it to Earth. Send it to anyone who will hear," he said. The message was broken, filled with static, but it carried the truth. "We are under attack. They are killing us. We cannot hold. Please help us." That was the last clear line before the signal was cut. The attackers swept through the colony like a storm. Fire rained from the skies. Towers crumbled. Ships exploded in the hangars before they could escape. Mothers shielded their children. Fathers tried to fight with old rifles. But nothing stopped the enemy. Hale knew the colony would not survive. He looked at the faces of his officers, young and terrified. Some had tears in their eyes, but they kept working, trying to keep the signal alive, trying to warn the rest of humanity. For Hale, the fight was no longer about survival. It was about leaving behind proof that they were not destroyed in silence. The last thing he saw before the command center fell was the burning horizon, a sky lit by fire, a world screaming into the stars. The attackers laughed. Their voices echoed across open channels. They spoke in a language most settlers could not understand. But their tone was clear. It was mockery, it was cruelty. To them, this was not war, it was sport. One of their captains declared, "This is the fate of the weak. This is the price of standing alone. Remember this, humans. No one will come for you." But even as he spoke, a single drone slipped through the wreckage. Its small engines burned weakly. Its frame cracked, but it carried the recording. The screams, the fires, the destruction. It carried all of it. The attackers did not notice. They believed their crime would remain hidden. In the dark void, that drone pushed on, carrying the silent cry of Asteron far away on Earth. Deep within the fleet command center, a young operator heard the broken signal. At first it was only static, then came the voice. Desperate, broken, "Please help us." The room fell silent. Officers looked to one another. Faces grew pale. They had heard distress calls before, but this one was different. It was not the sound of battle. It was the sound of slaughter. Admiral Reyes listened without moving. His jaw clenched as the images played. He saw children running, soldiers falling, buildings torn apart. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Admiral gave a single order. "Record everything, seal it. Let no one forget this." The silent cry of Asteron spread quickly through human space. People wept as they watched. Some called for justice, others for revenge. And though the galaxy watched with cold indifference, humanity felt something stir deep inside, a fire older than stars. The attackers thought they had silenced a colony, but what they had truly done was awaken an empire. The empty skies, the colony of Asteron, was gone. What had once been a home of laughter and trade was now only ash drifting in the void. The attackers left as suddenly as they had come. Their fleets vanished into the dark, leaving nothing but silence. The skies above the ruined world were empty now. No ships moved, no voices called, only the wind carried dust over broken walls, and the stars above seemed colder than before. But not everyone had perished. In the deep caverns beneath the mining fields, a few survivors had found shelter. Families huddled in the dark. Listening to the echoes of destruction above, they whispered prayers, not knowing if anyone would answer. Among them was Mira, a young teacher who had led her students into the caves when the alarms first sounded. She held their hands as the ground shook. She told them stories to keep them from crying. Her own tears fell in silence, but she refused to show fear. Another survivor, Jalen, an engineer, carried a recorder in his pack. He whispered into it by the dim light of a broken lantern. "If anyone finds this, know that we fought to survive. Know that we did not go quietly?" His voice cracked, but he forced the words out. He wanted the truth to remain. Even if no one lived to speak it, days passed. The survivors rationed water, shared scraps of food, and prayed for rescue. Yet none came. The galaxy was vast and they were small. To the empires, their suffering was invisible above them. The wreckage of the colony drifted in orbit. Silent ships floated like corpses, their lights long dead, their messages cut off. It was as if the stars themselves had turned their backs. The attackers believed the destruction was complete. They left laughing, carrying trophies, and boasting of their triumph. They thought humans would weep and move on. They thought the galaxy would forget. But in the darkness, something else stirred. The lone drone, battered but alive, had escaped. It carried the last images of the colony, the cries of the dying and the faces of the survivors. It flew quietly across the void, searching for a signal strong enough to carry its burden home. Inside Earth's fleet command, the signal arrived, distorted and broken. The operators watched the fragments again and again. They listened to the voices of children hiding, the desperate calls for help, the cruel laughter of the enemy. One officer whispered, "They didn't even fight us. They only killed the helpless." The room fell silent. For a long time, no one spoke, until Admiral Reyes broke the silence. His voice was low, steady, but filled with weight. "This is no accident. This is no mistake. They wanted us to hear this, and he was right. The enemy had left open channels. They wanted humanity to feel weak, to feel powerless. They wanted fear to spread. They wanted humans to believe they were prey. But something else spread instead: anger. It began as whispers, then grew louder across the colonies, in the halls of Earth, in the stations orbiting Mars. People watched the recordings. They clenched their fists, they swore oaths. The silent cry of Asteron was no longer just a message. It became a spark. The survivors in the caves did not know this. They only knew hunger and fear. They sang old songs to keep hope alive. Mira told her students stories of Earth, of oceans, of forests. "Remember," she said. "Remember who we are." Jalen kept recording. His voice grew weaker, but his words grew stronger. "If Earth hears us, let them know we did not surrender. Let them know we waited for them." Even in the dark, the skies above Asteron were empty, but far beyond those stars, fleets began to move quietly, carefully. Humanity was not weeping. Humanity was preparing. And in the silence of the galaxy, other empires listened. They whispered to one another. Some mocked the humans, saying they would do nothing. Others remembered old wars, old scars. They remembered what humanity had done before. The attackers believed the story was over, but in truth it had only begun. The silent cry of Asteron echoed into the void, and the answer was already on its way. The gathering storm, the silent cry of Asteron, did not fade. It spread like fire through human space. Carried by traders, soldiers, and even smugglers, it was whispered in the halls of power and shouted in the streets of the colonies. Every man, woman, and child knew the truth now. Humanity had been struck where it was weakest, and the enemy had laughed while they killed. On Earth, the debate began. In the great council chamber, voices clashed like thunder. Some leaders demanded restraint. "We cannot risk open war with the empires," they said. Others demanded vengeance. "If we do nothing, they will strike again and again until none of us remain." Admiral Reyes stood at the center of it all. His face was cold, his eyes sharp. He said nothing at first. He only played the recordings once more. The voices of children, the flames, the laughter of the enemy. The chamber fell into silence as the images filled the air. When the last image faded, Reyes finally spoke. "This is not war, this is murder. And if humanity does not answer, then we are already dead." His words struck deep. For hours the chamber argued, but outside those walls, the decision had already been made. The people demanded justice, the colonies raised their voices, the families of Asteron cried for vengeance. The fleets of Earth began to move, not in open parade, not with fanfare, but in silence. Warships slipped from their docks, moving into hidden orbits. Carriers refueled in the shadow of moons. Battleships were armed in deep space yards where no empire could see. It was a storm in the making. silent but unstoppable. In the training halls, soldiers drilled harder than ever. Young recruits shouted their oaths. Their commanders told them of Asteron, of the helpless who had fallen. "You are their answer," the commanders said. "You are the fire that will fall from the heavens." Whispers reached other empires. Some dismissed them. "The humans will do nothing. They are too cautious, too divided," they sneered. But others remembered history. They remembered the Terran wars of the past. They remembered how humans had fought when cornered. Not with caution, but with fury. In the survivor caves beneath Asteron, Mira and her students clung to hope. They did not know fleets were moving. They did not know voices across the stars had sworn revenge. They only knew the silence. Jalen kept recording, his voice weak now. "If anyone hears, do not forget us, do not forgive them." The galaxy was waiting, some with fear, others with hunger. The attackers boasted in their courts. They called humans weak. They laughed at the recordings. They believed they had crushed a world and shown their power. But in the quiet halls of Earth's command, Admiral Reyes stood before a wall of stars. He traced the map with his hand, marking the coordinates of the enemy. His voice was calm as he gave the order. "We will strike, not to fight, not to bargain, but to end this." The storm was gathering, hidden in the silence of space. Humanity was not shouting, humanity was not warning. Humanity was preparing to unleash fire. And far beyond, in the dark between stars, the enemy celebrated their false victory. They raised their banners and drank to their triumph, not knowing that every laugh, every boast, had already sealed their fate, because when humans rise, they do not rise slowly. They rise like a storm, sudden, violent, and unending. The galaxy did not yet see it, but it would. The storm was coming, and with it the wrath of Earth. First contact of fire. The enemy believed themselves untouchable. Their fleets drifted in orbit around their strongholds. Their soldiers boasted in taverns, and their leaders spoke of humans as prey. They thought the galaxy feared them, and in truth many did. But fear is fragile when built on arrogance. For weeks humanity had moved in silence. Warships slipped through the void under blackout. Carriers traveled through hidden lanes. Battleships waited in the shadow of dying stars. No broadcast, no threat. No warning was given, only silence. Then, one night in the galactic rim, the silence ended. The enemy fleet was stationed above a mining world they had seized. Thousands of slaves worked below, beaten and broken. The enemy ships floated above like vultures circling a corpse. Their commanders laughed, speaking of how easily humans had fallen. And then, without warning, the stars shifted. Out of the void came shapes so vast that even the enemy's largest warships seemed small. They appeared without sound, without light, until the first flash split the dark. The human fleet had arrived. The first strike came from the battleship Resolute. A single beam of fire tore through the enemy flagship, splitting it in half before alarms could even sound. The second strike came from the carrier Iron Dawn, unleashing swarms of fighters that moved like blades of light. The enemy screamed over their comms, "Unknown contacts? Unknown contacts." But their words ended in static, as entire squadrons were erased in seconds. To the slaves on the planet below, the sky became fire. At first, they thought it was another attack. But then they saw enemy ships falling, breaking apart, burning. And for the first time they cheered. Their chains rattled as they lifted their hands to the heavens. The enemy tried to respond. They formed lines, they launched volleys, but their weapons barely scratched the human shields. Their strategies fell apart for every human ship destroyed. 10 of theirs were lost for every fighter they sent. 20 more fell. It was not war. It was slaughter. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Reyes stood calm, his voice carried like steel. "Target their command vessels. Leave no fleet intact. They will learn what it means to strike at the defenseless one by one." Enemy ships lit up the skies, explosions painting the darkness with fire. The slaves below shouted louder. Some wept, some fell to their knees. They saw hope falling from the heavens, and they knew humanity had come. Across the galaxy, messages spread. The first reports were confused. Some said a new empire had entered the war. Others whispered that Earth had unleashed hidden weapons. But soon the truth was clear. The humans had answered. And their answer was fire. On another world, enemy commanders listened in disbelief. They slammed their fists, demanding reports. But the only message that came was silence. Silence from fleets, silence from colonies, silence where their power had once been. The enemy who had mocked humanity now felt something they had never known before. Fear, meanwhile, in the caves of Asteron. The survivors still waited, Mira whispered to the children. Hold on. Hold on a little longer, Jalen. His voice, faint, recorded one last message. If you hear this, know that we did not give up. Know that we waited, and if you strike them hard. He did not know it yet. But far above, his wish had already been granted. Humanity was striking harder than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy shuddered. Empires that once ignored humanity now watched in silence, wondering if they would be next. Those who had laughed at the silent cry of Asteron no longer laughed. They whispered instead, "The humans are coming." And in the void, the fire spread, unstoppable, merciless. It was the first contact of fire, and it was only the beginning. The wrath of Earth, the first strike, was only the beginning. The enemy fleets burned, their commanders screamed, and their soldiers scattered, but humanity did not stop. Humanity had never come only to fight. Humanity had come to punish. Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his eyes fixed on the star map, marking every enemy world. His voice was steady. "We move now, one by one. We will break them. We will show them that striking the defenseless has a cost they cannot pay." The orders spread like fire. From Mars to Titan, from Earth to the colonies, fleets ignited their engines. Warships moved in silent waves. Thousands of ships left the docks, every hull carrying the fury of Asteron. The first enemy stronghold fell in less than a day. Their planetary shields shattered under the combined barrage. Their armies tried to resist, but the skies rained with human fire. Cities that once mocked humanity went dark in minutes. Survivors fled into the mountains, whispering the same words again and again. The humans have come. The second stronghold lasted even less. A single dreadnought unleashed its weapons, entire fleets evaporating under its cannons. The defenders begged for surrender. Their signals flooded the air, but humanity's response was silence. Their warships advanced without a word, without hesitation. The helpless of Asteron had not been spared, and now neither would their killers. To the galaxy, it was unthinkable. Wars usually dragged on for years, but this was something else. Battles ended in hours. Whole systems fell in days. The humans moved with precision, every strike leaving nothing but wreckage behind. The enemy leaders tried to rally. They called their allies, promised rewards, demanded support, but no empire answered. Some watched in fear, others in satisfaction. For once the predators had become the prey, and none were willing to stand in humanity's path. In the survivor caves of Asteron, Mira held the children close. They heard the rumble of distant quakes, not from the enemy now, but from the heavens above. One child asked in a trembling voice, "Is it over?" Mira smiled weakly. "Not yet, but soon." Jalen, sick and pale, clutched his recorder. His voice was faint. "If Earth hears this, know that justice came. Know that the stars burned for us on the battlefield." The enemy begged. Their fleet sent desperate messages. "We did not mean to. We will not again. Spare us." But Admiral Reyes only looked at the burning stars. His words were cold. They begged at Asteron, and no one listened. Now they will listen to silence one by one. The enemy strongholds were reduced to ash. The wrath of Earth was not wild rage. It was measured, precise, unstoppable. Humanity was not fighting for territory, not for conquest. They were fighting for memory, for every voice that had cried out and been ignored. The galaxy trembled. Worlds far away locked their gates. Fleets stood down. No one dared to move, for fear that a single step would draw the humans' fire. The attackers, once loud with laughter, now whispered only in fear. What have we awakened? And through it all, Earth's fleets kept moving, leaving behind a trail of fire in the heavens. The helpless had been struck, but now the helpless were avenged. Humanity's wrath was not a whisper. It was a roar that shook the stars. And the galaxy knew this was not the end. It was only the warning. Silence of the stars, the fire of Earth spread quickly. System after system fell. Fleets once proud and loud were now nothing but drifting wreckage. Cities that had stood for centuries were left in ruins. And still the humans did not stop. Across the galaxy, silence began to grow. Markets that once rang with laughter were quiet. Streets that once sang with music were empty. No empire dared speak too loudly. No warlord dared boast. They all watched the skies with fear, wondering if the next fire would fall on them. News traveled faster than ships. Stories of human war fleets moved from world to world. Some said they came without warning. Others said they came like shadows, appearing where no defense could stop them. But all the stories agreed on one thing. Wherever humanity went, silence followed. In hidden council chambers, leaders of great empires argued. "We cannot let them continue," one said. "They will destroy everything." But another replied in a whisper, "What will you do? Fight them? Look at what they did to the predators. Look at how quickly they burned." The chamber fell into uneasy quiet. None wished to be the next target. On the slave worlds once ruled by the attackers, people cheered, chains were broken, overseers fled, and the skies that once burned with cruelty now burned with human fire. For the first time, the weak felt hope. They whispered one name again and again, humanity. Meanwhile, on Asteron, the survivors still held out in the caves. They felt the tremors of the ground, heard distant echoes, not of enemy bombardments this time, but of human ships clearing the orbit. Mira looked to the children, her smile stronger now. "Listen," she said, "do you hear it? The sky is ours again, Jalen." Weak but alive recorded once more. His voice a whisper. "We are not forgotten. Earth heard us and they answered." His words carried no despair now. Only peace. Back on Earth, the people waited for news. Reports came in like waves. Every one more shocking than the last. Fleets destroyed. Strongholds shattered, armies crushed. Humanity's name spread like a storm. But the strangest thing was the silence. The attackers who once broadcast their victories now said nothing. Their channels were dead. Their propaganda silenced, their threats gone. The stars themselves seemed quieter, as if waiting for the next strike in the fleet command. Admiral Reyes stood with his officers. His face was carved from stone. He spoke calmly. "The galaxy thought we were prey. They thought we would bend. They thought wrong. From now on, they will remember." Other empires took notice. The proud warlords who once sneered at humans now avoided their gaze. The merchants who once mocked them now bowed their heads. Even the ancient empires, older than Earth itself, whispered among themselves, "Perhaps it is best not to touch them. Perhaps it is best to leave them in peace." Fear had become a shield, and that shield stretched across human space. Yet not all saw it as fear. Some saw it as justice on distant worlds, where helpless people had long suffered under cruel masters. They began to hope. They prayed that one day, the humans might come for them too. The galaxy had changed. Where once there was noise, now there was silence. Where once humans were overlooked, now they were watched, feared, and remembered. The stars were quiet, but in that quiet was a warning carved in fire, and in that silence, the galaxy understood one truth. Humanity does not forgive crimes against the defenseless. Humanity does not forget. Humanity answers with fire. The final warning. The enemy homeworld burned. Their great fleets had fallen. Their fortresses shattered. Their proud voices silenced. Where once they had mocked humanity, now only ashes remained above the ruins. The human fleet hovered in silence, hundreds of ships, their weapons still glowing from battle. The galaxy watched through hidden channels. Every empire, every warlord, every ruler stared at the images. None could look away. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Reyes gave no smile, no cheer. His voice was calm as stone. "Transmit," he ordered. The signal spread across the stars, reaching every corner of the galaxy. The image appeared, a man in a dark uniform, the Earth flag behind him. His eyes were cold, his voice steady. "To those who hear this, let it be known, humanity does not strike first. Humanity does not seek conquest, but harm the defenseless. And you will find us at your gates. We will not warn twice." The words carried with them the fire of Asteron. They carried the voices of the dead, the cries of the helpless. They carried the wrath of Earth itself in the caves of Asteron. The survivors heard the message relayed. Mira closed her eyes and held the children close. She whispered, "You see, we were not forgotten." Earth remembered us. Jalen, pale and weak, smiled for the first time in many days. His recorder clutched to his chest. "The stars heard our cry," he whispered. And Earth answered. Across the galaxy, reactions rippled like shockwaves. Some rulers shivered in fear, remembering their own crimes, wondering if they too would face Earth's fire. Others bowed their heads in respect, whispering that justice had finally come to the stars. And yet not all were silent in the dark corners of the galaxy. Some whispered of revenge, of waiting, of striking when the humans least expected, but their voices were drowned beneath the weight of silence. For the moment, none dared move in the great halls of Earth. The people stood united, Families of the fallen wept, but their tears carried pride, not despair. Children learned the story of Asteron, and swore they would never let such a crime happen again. Humanity had found not only vengeance but purpose. Admiral Reyes stood at the viewport of his ship. Looking down at the broken world, his officers waited, uncertain if the order would come to finish what had begun. But the Admiral shook his head. His voice was low. Enough. Let the ashes speak for themselves. Let the galaxy remember this day, not for our rage, but for our warning. The fleet turned. Engines burned as the warships left the ruined skies. They did not linger, they did not conquer. They left only silence behind. In that silence, the galaxy heard the message more clearly than any words. Humanity would not tolerate cruelty. Humanity would not forgive crimes against the weak. Humanity had become the fire from the heavens, and so the final warning echoed, whispered from star to star. Do not strike the defenseless, for Earth is watching. The galaxy trembled. Knowing the truth, humanity had spoken once, and once was enough.